I remember when our daughter was in kindergarten, her class performed a Thanksgiving play, and during that play, I remember this short poem that they recited about the upcoming holiday, and it said, Thanksgiving is a holiday each November brings, and we are especially thankful for many happy things. Yes, Thanksgiving does come each year, and it's celebrated the fourth Thursday in November. I'm grateful that this is one widely celebrated national holiday. It helps us to refocus our thoughts on the many blessings that we enjoy, and those are quite numerous. We have many reasons to be thankful, don't we? And not just on one day. There's one story in the Old Testament where giving thanks, or thanksgiving, was far from reality. This story begins in Numbers 13 when 12 men were sent on a reconnaissance mission of sorts to spy out the land of Canaan. And upon their return from this 40-day covert operation, 10 of the spies gave the majority report. It was a negative report that was laced with fear and impossibilities, stating that there was no way that these people, their own people, could take this land. As one can only imagine, this report evoked fear in the hearts of people. There was a sense of despair that began to set in. But the minority report had not yet been presented. The remaining members of this special ops team brought quite a different report. One of those two, Caleb, spoke up and said, "Let's go up at once and occupy this land, for we're able to take it." Joshua, along with Caleb, was certain of the God factor in taking this land. It could be done. Numbers 14 tells us that the people had bought in to the report of the 10, and they feared their future. But verse 2 says that all the people grumbled against Moses and Aaron, saying that they would have rather died in the wilderness or in Egypt. Then they said, "Why did the Lord bring us to die by the sword?" They wanted to go back, and they wanted to go back now. Moses and Aaron were moved with unbelief of the people's attitude, and they fell on their face before them. Joshua and Caleb tore their clothes and said, "If the Lord is happy with us, he'll bring us into this land, and he'll give it to us, a land that's rich, a land that they described as flowing with milk and honey." They begged the people not to rebel against God, because God was with them. However, still unsatisfied, the people wanted to stone their leaders. Things were looking pretty bad. The children of Israel were far from thankful. They were ungrateful for what God had done for them. He had protected them during the day with a shielding cloud and a pillar of fire at night to provide safety and warmth. They also had forgotten that God had daily fed them with manna from the sky. Oh yes, and something else. God had blessed them with shoes and clothes that never wore out. With all these blessings long forgotten, God was to the point of destroying them. Instead, he would make of Moses that great nation. However, Moses was able to convince God to change his mind about destroying these people, and he asked God to pardon their sin and to remember his steadfast love. We know that God honored Moses' plea. But for their sin, those over the age of 20 who complained against God died in the wilderness, with the exception of Joshua and Caleb. How ungrateful to God these people were for his care and delivery from Egypt. They had trusted God to work out their well-being for good because he saw the big picture. Well, what about us? As followers of Jesus, we're told in Philippians 2 verses 14 and 15 these words, "Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world." We should be ashamed to complain, because when we do, we're exploiting God's goodness. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm grateful that God's goodness is not based on my ability to never complain. We should have grateful hearts, and we should also use our words to say so. And when we share our gratefulness through our action and words, we will change our surroundings, our homes, our work, our church, even our city and our nation. So, where does our focus lie? In our blessings or in our problems? Remember that what we focus on becomes what is most important in our lives. I'm reminded that David said in Psalm 27 that his focus was on God. So, may we all be encouraged to focus on God and on the positive things, the blessings in our lives. Let's remember that even though we may be going through some rough times and perhaps things are not going well for us, we can take heart from these verses in Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7, which say in part, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." We should remember this simple line. Thanksgiving is a holiday that each November brings, and we are especially thankful for many happy things. So, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and every day.